Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for coming today. And so this book, how many of you have a copy that either you or your neighbor has it? Okay. Do we have a few more copies to run through?
Yes, there's four more in that. Then there's more in the cupboard. The box is closed, so
Okay.
we can bring them if you like.
Yeah, you can open it. So this book, you can look at it, we can read through it, and if any of you want, the book will be available for buying after the session. But this is the Bhagavad Gita. I've been studying it for many years now. Almost 15 years I've been writing. Writing an article on the Gita every day. So I have about 5,000 articles on the GitaDaily.com. But from start of this year, I felt that I was being very analytical in studying the Gita, but I wanted to have a more devotional approach. Now, many of the Gita's verses are not just sources of wisdom for me, they are like close personal friends. And if you have a close friend, then we want to know more and more about that friend. And one way we get to know more and more about a friend is by spending more time with them and spending more time in different contexts. So if we know them at work, you would like to say, how are they at home? How are they on outing? If we know them in the temple, okay, how are they in their profession? How are they in a non-devotional setting? So like that, I wanted to see, I had read the commentaries of most of the acharyas of the Gita, but I wanted to see at other places how the Gita's verses have been quoted. And then I found, especially in Mukundmala Stotra, but a few other places also, several verses which seem to be directly inspired by the Bhagavad Gita's verses. So for example, there's a prayer in the Mukundmala Stotra, that's a classic prayer composition by King Kulashekar, who is an Alvar, a great saint in the South Indian tradition, Vaishnava tradition. So he says that Samsara sagar nimagnam ananta deenam uddharatum arasi hare purushottamosmi. He says, this unending, unsurpassable ocean of material existence, O Lord, it behooves you to lift me out of this ocean. So now why does it behoove the Lord? Behoove means this is what you should do it. It's right that you do it. So why? It's because you have promised it over for us. So then this seems to be a prayer that is inspired directly by a promise from Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. Teshamaham samuddarta mrityu samsara sagarat bhavamina chirat partha maya veshita chetasam. I will lift you swiftly from the ocean of material existence. So that gave me this inspiration that we could approach the Gita's verses as inspirations for prayer. So that is what we have done. I have tried to do in this particular book. So on each page there is one verse from the Gita with one title, one beautiful deity picture of Krishna from various temples across the world. And then I have translated the verse into English poetry so that we get more of a poetic, emotional connect with the Gita. And then there is a prayer reflection, which is over here. So I would request all of you to read or different individuals among you to read one paragraph as we move forward. But let's begin with this title. You can repeat after me. Bless me, O Lord, to be a spiritual fruit, not a religious nut. This is a prayer that brings a smile on your face. So, let's recite the verse. Yavanartha udapane sarvata samplutodake tavan sarveshu vedeshu brahmanasya vijanataha. For one who knows the truth so deep, from him Vedic rites can no secret keep. As a well holds worth in a land run dry, its value fades when rivers flow far and high. So let's recite the verse once again. We'll recite it once responsively and then we'll recite it 3 times collectively after that. Literally the meaning Yavan Artha Udapane. Udapane is body of water, a well. So Artha is as long as it has value. Yavan. Sarvataha Sampluto. But if there's water everywhere, then it does not have value. As long as it's not there, it has value. Tavan Sarveshu Vedeshu. That time the specific words, okay, this particular injunction here, this particular statement here, all that has great value. Tavan Sarveshu Vedeshu Brahmanasya Vijanataha. Once one understands, one becomes a Brahman. Now, Brahman here doesn't just mean a person is born in a Brahman family, but one who knows Brahman. One who becomes really wise in the import of the Vedas. For that purpose, person, the specific statement here, they don't become that important because the overall purpose has become self-evident in the heart. Yavanartha udapane sarvataha samplutodake bhavan sarveshu vedeshu brahmanasya vijanataha together. Yavanartha udapane sarvata samplutodake tavan sarveshu vedeshu brahmanasya vijanataha. Yavanartha udapane sarvata samplutodake tavan sarveshu vedeshu brahmanasya vijanataha. Yavanartha udapane sarvata samplutodake tavan sarveshu vedeshu brahmanasya vijanataha. Who would like to read the first paragraph here?
My dear Lord, help me to gain a balanced understanding of the role of rituals in my spiritual journey. Let me not fall into the category of those who overvalue rituals, who equate excellence in the technical details of rituals as the very essence of transcendence. When I fall into that category, I become caught in pettiness, thinking that my rituals make me superior to those who don't follow them, or those who don't observe them in the exact same way that I do. I don't want to be one of the world's many religious nuts, whose self-righteousness only increases the world's hardships.
Yes. So here, so we will discuss about this problem of broadly about fanaticism. So when we use the word religious nuts and spiritual fruits, what is the sense in which we are using it? Religious nuts, the word nut is used in the sense that somebody who is a little crazy. Okay, it's not visible? Yeah. So we use it in the sense that the person is a little crazy. So like sometimes you say, if somebody has a nut loose over here, then that person becomes a nut. So that means religious nuts are people who are a bit crazy. They can be both ways. One extreme is they are sentimental, where they just get carried away very wildly by emotions, and that might be harmful to them. If they get misled, they are gullible, but sometimes they can become fanatical, and then they can become harmful to others also. And overall, in between is religious people can be very judgmental. So sentimental, judgmental, and fanatical. It's like a spectrum. Sentimental is one's own relationship with others. Judgmental is one's own relationship with God or one's own relationship with oneself. Then judgmental is with others. And fanatical is even more, it's like they're imposing on others. We'll discuss the differences in this. But the idea is that there are certain rituals. Now the word rituals can be used in a negative sense as well as a positive sense. Rituals are often certain external actions that are done. Those external actions are important, no doubt. but sometimes they can be overvalued. So I'll talk about this problem of fanaticism, extremism, radicalism. These were slightly different connotations, but broadly they fall in the same direction. And I'll talk about this broadly in using an acronym ACT. This is like a framework I use to evaluate the any challenge, any problem that is there. So first is that we want to look at what is the cause of the problem. But before we look at the cause, we want to understand the magnitude, the extent, the amplitude, the severity. So the amplitude is like the volume. The amplitude is we want to make an assessment, whichever word you want to use, an assessment of why this is at all a problem. Then we look at the cause, and then we look at transformation. How we can protect ourselves and how can we protect our loved ones. These are three broad parts we'll discuss in today's session. So I was few years ago, I was in Texas. For most of us almost everyone here seems to be an Indian. For Indians now, if you know about America, America is the land of Hollywood, America is the land of materialism. That's what we think. And there's some truth to that. But actually, in the Western world, America is the most religious country. Among the Western countries, America has a whole Bible Belt, but there's a lot of aggressive evangelical Christianity is there. So the coastal part of America, New York and the east and west coast, they are quite materialistic and even hedonistic to some extent. But there's quite a bit of religious aggressiveness in that part of the world. So I was in Texas, I was going for a program, and there on the car in front of me, there's a bumper sticker. It said, "Oh God, please save me from your preachers." Now, in Christianity, the idea is that Jesus saves, and Jesus saves us through his preachers. But if the preachers are very holier than thou, condescending, judgmental, hell and brimstone kind of people, then I don't want anything to do with it. So that's the idea, save me from preachers. So at a basic level, what happens is that there is apathy or even there is aversion. When we are trying to assess what is the problem with fanaticism. If somebody is very pushy, very forceful, very imposing, then people can become averse to it. I don't want anything to do with these people. Now, even if somebody doesn't become averse, they become apathetic. The largest growing demographic in America with respect to in the religious landscape is something called nuns. Now, these nuns are not female monks. They're not the nuns. These are nuns. Nuns means these people are those who say that if you ask them what is your religion, none. They are also called as apatheists. I don't care for any religion. And they do have some valid points. One of their main arguments is, you religious people, you fight about the nature of the other world and you make this world more visible because of your fights. And that is unfortunately a truth. It's not the complete truth, but it is a significant part of the truth. So at a very basic level, when there is fanaticism, that puts people off. So because apathy and aversion, these are more of a psychological effect on people in general. And now this is only so I'll talk about fanaticism, who all it affects and how it affects. The fanaticism, it can affect broadly with respect to any group of people. There are insiders, there are outsiders, and there are even, you can say, neutral, fence sitters, whatever word you want to say. There are, let's put it, people who are not completely outside, people who are not completely inside. Yeah, I'm not an atheist, I'm not just a materialist, but it's like there are many people, even in the spirit Krishna consciousness, it's like if you use the dating word, "No, I'm interested in you, but I'm not committed to you." It's like that. So people say, I'm getting in touch with my friends. So I met my school friend, college friends. So one of them told me that I met him in Phoenix. So he said that I regularly go to ISKCON for Janmashtami. And we don't have a very large congregation over there. So I asked the local devotees, "Do you know him? Have you seen him?" He says, "We have never seen him." And I asked him, "How regularly do you go?" He said, "Every Janmashtami." Now that is nice, it's going at least once a year. But it's like, okay, I appreciate you from a distance. So those are the fence sitters. Now what happens is, the fence sitters, quite often, extremism, it drives them away. It makes them, I want to go away, I don't want to do anything with these people. Now, outsiders, so the fence sitters, they get, is the red color visible?
Yes.
They get alienated. Those who are outsiders, they don't just get alienated, they become antagonistic. They become aggressive. They start attacking. After 9/11, this happened that there was a spate for almost 10 years of what was, especially in the West, it's called the age of the new atheists. There were a number of books written by people who said that religion is the cause of all evil. And one person said this, in the history of humanity, there is no idea that has been invented by the human mind that is as toxic as the idea of God. So, a lot of extreme statements that came up, but it was more of a reaction there. So people feel that these religious people are causing a lot of problems in the world. And there's one atheist who said that throughout human history, good people will do good things and bad people will do bad things. But when it comes to making good people do bad things, religion alone has that power. Now again, this is not the complete truth. I won't say it's only religion, but it's any kind of ideological indoctrination. When somebody starts becoming completely narrow-minded, this is the only reality. It happened with communism also. Any ideology if somebody adopts. So in communism, what happened was, the state became the replacement of God. And the state would actually pay and reward family members to turn against their family members. So if in a family, one person spoke against the state, then immediately another family member would report to the police and the police would come and arrest that family member. And the fact that you proved that you are more faithful to the state than to the family, you will be rewarded for that. So it was quite indoctrinating. And most people do not know, but World War I and World War II were like horror shows in the history of humanity in the last century. But more than the number of people who were killed in World War I and World War II were the number of people who were killed in Soviet Russia and Communist China by the government itself, or inside without any wars. So it was horrendous. The point is that when a person becomes indoctrinated by something, this is right, and anything that is opposed to this is wrong. When a person believes that, they become blinded by that. So these outsiders can become very antagonistic. In fact, atheism, the major appeal of atheism comes not so much from the fact that atheism is so intellectually attractive. It is more from that religion seems so alarming or unattractive. Now, for the insiders, what happens? The insiders can also become very lonely or isolated. Why? Because when there is extremism, then there is a fear that if I speak one word different from whoever is in charge over here, if I express one opinion wrong, I will be judged, I will be targeted, I will be rejected. And that rejection may not be in terms of, not everybody is fanatical in the sense that they will destroy people. But still, you can feel completely isolated, rejected, devalued, and then there's a lot of loneliness. This can come generally. This can come especially in religions where there is a lot of high expectation in terms of moral standards or ritual standards. So generally people come to a religious or spiritual group because they want a sense of community. Modern society is quite lonely. Britain was the first country that appointed an official loneliness minister. And eventually that first loneliness minister resigned because he felt too lonely. So in the past we had joint families, then we had nuclear families, now the nucleus is also split. And there are solitary protons and neutrons, electrons orbiting all around in the concrete jungles. So there's a lot of loneliness. And then often people come to spiritual groups because they want a sense of community. And quite often they do get that. But the problem sometimes comes that if the religious group has very high ritual or moral standards, and if sometimes people fail to meet those standards, then they can't speak about their struggles to anyone. And then inside religious groups also people can start feeling very lonely. Because they have distanced themselves from the rest of the world, so they can't really connect with the rest of the world. But in their own community they feel I'll be judged, so then they also feel lonely. So extremism can affect everyone. Now here I have not even talked about the most common problem that breaks extremism out in the news is violence. Religious people become fanatical and destructive. Now that can affect everyone. That can affect outsiders, that can affect fence sitters, and that can also affect insiders. So what do I mean it can affect insiders? Because when somebody is fanatical, so we are looking at the problem, assessing the problem. Fanaticism comes in two distinct brands. One is exclusivism. Exclusivism is more that the idea that I have, or my religion has exclusive rights to God. There is no way to God except through my pathway. So, like if you have some cricket match going on, it may be advertised exclusively on ESPN. It's here, nowhere else. So exclusivism is the idea that only our path has exclusive access to God, no other path. Now, a further version of exclusivism is extremism. So exclusivism is more in the domain of thoughts or ideas, that we alone have access to God. If you are not following our path, you are going to go to hell. Now extremism goes in the domain of actions. Extremists are much kinder than exclusivists. They say that you are anyway going to go to hell, why delay it? We will help you get there faster. So they bring it into the domain of action. And this is, now significantly, it's very easy for us to label maybe a particular religion as extremist or whatever. But it's not that simple. Extremism is a universal human weakness. And even if, say, we consider radical Islam, but it is within Islam itself there are Shias and Sunnis, and there are fights among them. And there are Sufi Muslims and there are other Muslims. They are targeted by one group, other group. So what happens? Exclusivism, when it leads to extremism, it keeps becoming a smaller and a smaller circle of people who exactly agree with what I believe. And if you don't agree, then you are out. So it is not just that one religion is a danger to other religions. It is this particular mentality that is the problem. Krishna talks about this later in 18.22. He talks about knowledge in the mode of ignorance. He says, Yattu krutsnavat ekasmin. Those who take one thing and make it into everything. One thing and make it into everything. So that is knowledge in the mode of ignorance. We know something, but that knowledge makes us ignore everything else. This is what I know, and this is all that matters. Nothing else matters. So let's look at the next part. So it is a serious problem for everyone. What is the acronym we were discussing? So A, C, D. A was the assessment of the problem. Now C is the, let's look at the cause of the problem. So let's read the second paragraph. Who would like to read it?
At the same time, O Lord, bless me to avoid recoiling to other extremes, where I join the ranks of those who devalue rituals entirely, dismissing them as superstitions or pointless relics from a bygone age. Even when such people want to be spiritual, their rejection of all rituals leaves them bankrupt of any aids to tangibly progress on the spiritual path.
Yes. So this is, we need to further assess the problem here a little bit. That we can have two extremes if you consider rituals. Now I'm using rituals as a shorthand for referring to any external aspect. Could be how we dress, what marks we put on our body, how specifically we worship, how we eat food, whatever it might be. There are many rituals each religion might have. So one extreme is to overvalue the rituals. This is what leads to fanaticism. Now, the other extreme is to devalue the rituals. Oh, they're not important at all. They are all just externals. Now, when we say they are all just externals, okay, but then if we want to become spiritual, if you want to grow spiritually, we need to practice something. Without practicing anything, you cannot grow spiritually. Some people say, oh, spirituality is just a state of mind. Well, yes and no. It is a state of mind, but it is also a state of being. That it is a state in which we live. It is, and to come to that state of being, we need to modify the way we live. So there are certain lifestyles which are more conducive to spiritual growth. There are certain lifestyles which are less conducive to spiritual growth. So the externals, they do matter. Like all of you sitting right now. Now imagine if while sitting, I stretch backwards and I put my feet on this particular chair. I sit like that. I'm feeling very humble right now. Now, is it possible? Well, maybe, but it's going to be very difficult. Isn't the externals do affect the internals? To say that, oh, spirituality is just an internal state, externals are all show off. They can be show off, but they're not always a show off. So when we devalue, then it's almost like our spirituality becomes completely empty. There is no spiritual substance left. This is often the problem of a group called SBNR. You ever heard of this group? Yeah, spiritual but not religious. You may not have heard this term, but you probably have heard this mentality. I'm spiritual but not religious. Now, the people may be well-intentioned. What they want to say is, from their perspective, being spiritual is like open-minded. Yeah, we want to have some higher experiences. We appreciate different cultures. I'm spiritual. And they say I'm not religious. What they mean is, I'm not narrow-minded. I'm not bigoted. I'm not imposing my view on others. The intention might be good when they say that. But quite often, the problem comes and it becomes very empty. If we don't follow anything, we won't rise. So we will look back at this. So in between these two is that we need to value appropriately. So we'll see what appropriately valuing means. But, so we avoid both these extremes. Now, once we understand this problem, let's look at the cause. But while we're looking at the cause, what are the causes of fanaticism? Broadly, they arise from three areas. It's you have heard of this character called imp? Not a short form for important, but imp. Imp means somebody is impish. Like somebody is naughty, somebody is. How many of you have heard the word imp? No one. Okay. That's okay. Imps were quite common in British or Western. Basically, an impish character is a person who is naughty, who is presumptuous, who is a little cheeky, who is a little arrogant. So, the first cause of fanaticism. Okay, first cause of fanaticism is insecurity. Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur would say that aggressive religion, this is a paraphrasing what it is because it's Bengali, aggressive religion comes from an insecure faith. He said that basically what happens, if I am not sure of what I am doing, then I need constant validation that what I am doing is right. And if anybody is doing anything different, then the very existence of such a person threatens my faith. So, if somebody has any belief different from what I have, then I have to either correct them or stop them or eliminate them. Otherwise, I am insecure. So this is often when there is internal insecurity, when people seek validation externally. Now we all need some level of validation externally. But one of the fundamental things to understand in the spiritual domain is, that Krishna talks about this in 10.15. I'll come to this when I talk about the solution once again. But actually God is always greater than our conception of God. Krishna says that, Arjuna says to Krishna that, Swayam evatmanatmanam vettatvam purushottama. He says, you alone know yourself, O Lord. Nahite bhagavan vyaktim vidur devanadanoha. Who you are really, no one knows. Not even the devatas know. So Arjuna is actually reiterating here in 10.14, this is 10.15 whatever. The previous verse also talked the same thing. In 10.2, what Krishna has said, Name viduh suragana prabhavam na maharshaya. What Krishna has said, Arjuna is reiterating that. So when there is insecurity, the problem is that we think if I conceive of God in this way, I worship God in this way, then anybody who is doing anything different, that is a great threat for me. So now broadly speaking, this is less of a problem within Sanatana Dharma than it is in the Dharmic religions, than it is in the Abrahamic religions. The Abrahamic religions are often exclusivist. Abrahamic religions are basically Judaism, Christianity, Islam. They broadly share the idea that we are chosen people of God. We have the way to God. So that becomes a problem. So insecurity means the idea that if I am wrong, if I am right, then there can be no other way. So that is where a lot of insecurity comes in. But the fact is that such insecurity, it comes from a misconception. If you consider when we are going up a mountain. Now, I may go up the mountain from this way. The top of the mountain is spiritual consciousness. The bottom of the mountain is material consciousness. So in one sense, right now when I'm talking about the problem, I'm also talking about the solution. Although explicitly I'll talk about the solution at the end. So now I may take one path of the mountain. Somebody else may take some other path of the mountain. A third person may take some other path of the mountain. So there can be different paths of the mountain. So just because somebody else is taking a path that is different does not invalidate my path. And when we are looking at the top of the mountain, I may see one aspect of the mountain. Somebody else may see some other aspect of the mountain. And from the bottom, the two peaks, the two aspects of the peaks that we are seeing, they may be very different. Sometimes so different that to understand the similarity also will be different. Are we looking at the same thing? Maybe we are, but we are looking at very different aspects of the same thing. So this insecurity comes from a misunderstanding, from basically assuming that what we know, that our conception of God is God. Yes, we have a particular conception. It's important to hold on to our conception so that we can become attracted. But God is bigger than our conception of God. Now, more problematic than insecurity is misunderstanding. So I'm talking about the acronym here, IMP. So sometimes people are aggressive because they're insecure. Sometimes they're aggressive because they misunderstand. Now what is the misunderstanding over here? In every tradition, could say religious tradition or any tradition, but this principle applies to every tradition. But we are focusing on this tradition. There are certain external things and there are certain internal. We can say there is a circumstantial, which is the external, and there is the essential. Prabhupada referred to this as the principles and the details. This is true in every tradition. So now there are the circumstantial aspects which may change according to circumstances. And there is the essential aspect which will never change. So fanaticism often comes when we make, if we use the word details and principles as Prabhupada used to, when we make all details into principles. When we take one thing and make it into everything. What I talked about earlier. Misunderstanding is what? We make every small thing into a big thing. Yattu krutsnavar ekasmin. So 18.22 Krishna says that if this is the vast tradition, this whole thing is the tradition, but I catch on to one thing in the tradition. And I equate, this is one thing of the one part of the tradition, but if I equate it as the whole thing, that means if you are not doing this thing, you are not following the tradition at all. You are wrong, you are off, you are deviant. This can happen to anyone. So, once a person was in Los Angeles, there's a big bridge from which people often would jump and commit suicide. So, this person was standing on that bridge itself, about to jump off. And then suddenly, he says, "Don't jump off the bridge," somebody said. And he looked around. So, this person on the bridge said, "Why should I not jump off?" He says, "Why do you want to jump off the bridge?" "Because no one loves me." And this person was walking closer. "But Jesus loves you." That is a common thing in Christianity. Jesus loves you. This person on the bridge itself, he said, "So, are you a Christian?" He says, "Yes, of course I am a Christian." "Are you?" He says, "Yes." This person walking closer and closer. "So, which Christian are you? A Catholic or a Protestant?" So he said, this person said, "I'm a Protestant." "Oh, wonderful. I'm also a Protestant." So he came closer. "Which Protestant are you?" So he said, "I'm a Baptist." "Oh, wonderful. I'm also a Baptist." And then he further came closer. "Okay, which Baptist are you?" He says, "I'm a Southern Baptist." "Oh, wonderful. I'm also Southern Baptist." Came closer. Which Southern Baptist are you?" He says, "I'm a Reformed Southern Baptist." "Jump down and die, you heretic." So the idea is that sometimes there can be such narrow differences which can be exaggerated, and there can be huge conflicts that arise from that. Now, for somebody looking at it from an external perspective, we may not even know the word Baptist or Southern Baptist. You're okay, you're a Christian. But for them, those differences can become huge. And this is not just to make fun of other religions. Now, in Hinduism also there's a famous South Indian temple where there were two groups of people who would be worshipping. And they had the elephant on which the deity would go out for procession. And these two groups, they would wear tilak slightly differently. So they had a fight. How should the tilak be put on the elephant? And they just could not resolve the fight. And the fight went to the local court. Then they were not satisfied with the decision. They went to the high court. They went to the Supreme Court. And finally, by the time the Supreme Court gave a decision, the poor elephant died also. So, now when this happens, what is happening is that tilak is important, no doubt. But is it something just to be made so important? So when one thing is made into everything. I just few days ago talking with one Prabhupada disciple. He himself a sannyasi, a very prominent leader. Many of you know him. He told me don't quote my name, so I'm not going to quote it. But he said he had gone to one of his godbrothers. He's also a guru, but he's a grahastha, not a sannyasi. And he was staying at his place, the guest room. And this godbrother showed him around the room and showed him the restroom. He says, here is the shower. But he said, the Prabhupada never used a shower. So I have kept a bucket for you. Follow Prabhupada and use a bucket. Now, did Prabhupada start the International Society for No Shower Use? So now, what happened is, okay, Prabhupada did that. But is that a central thing? What one uses for bathing. Now, if you want to use environmental reasons or whatever, that's a different thing for it. But to say Prabhupada did this and that's why you have to do this. That's Prabhupada's personal preference. We respect that, but we can't make that as a principle. That's a detail. When the detail becomes a principle, then we become fanatical. This can happen in so many different areas, where something which is when people do this, it's not that these people are unreasonable. See, this kind of fanaticism is not violent fanaticism, it's not something physically violent. But it can be emotionally violent. Because when we come as a community, then what happens is our hearts are quite tender. Because the community of devotees is where we want to bond, where we want to connect with each other. And if we get devalued, if we get derided, if we get criticized in the community, it can be very disorienting, it can be very discouraging. So one has to be very careful about what we impose on others. There are certain things which we maybe feel inspired by, and that's wonderful if we are inspired by them. But to impose them on others, that is where things can start going wrong. So we take one thing and we make it into everything. I have a website, two websites, Spiritual Scientist, Gita Daily. So I do some online outreach to them. There's one devotee from one city in India who got connected. And I told him we can go to the local devotee community there. And then I was holding a retreat in the Govardhan Eco Village. And another people connected with me had come there. So he also came. And when he came, I asked him, what was your experience? So he said that, have you gone to local community? He says, I'm never going to go there again. I said, what happened? He said, there are two communities. And both of them, the temple is a bit far away. There are two Grahastha communities. Then they have like local center. And they meet every weekend for Mangalarti. Mm-hmm. Now one group has Mangalarti at 4:30. The other group has Mangalarti at 5 o'clock. And he said the second group, the first group said that Prabhupada said Mangalarti means 4:30. If you are not having Mangalarti at 4:30, you are deviating from Prabhupada. Because you are deviating from Prabhupada, it is not Mangalarti, it is Amangalarti. Krishna will not accept your bhakti. Who are you to know what Krishna will accept and what Krishna will not accept? He said, are you appointed by Krishna? Do you know Krishna's mind? So, what has happened is, now this devotee may feel that, yes, I am serious in my bhakti because I wake up for Mangalarti. That's good. But just because something makes us feel strongly connected with Krishna does not necessarily mean that is the only way everyone has to connect with Krishna. So the essential mistake, and what is the misunderstanding over here is, the misunderstanding is what works for me. So somebody may fast on Ekadashi. They may fast Nirjal. When I was more based in the Brahmachari Ashram, of course I'm still in Brahmachari Ashram, but I'm mostly traveling now. So when we were early days, we were all fanatical also. So we would have in the Brahmachari Ashram the Nirjal club and the Nirlajja club. So Nirjal is those who fast without water. Nirlajja is the shameless club. those who eat food. Now, just because somebody is eating food doesn't mean that they are shameless. You know? That each person has their own body nature. And then, some people are, it's easier to fast, for some people it's difficult to fast. So what works for me, we start thinking that is the only thing that can work for anyone. So we extrapolate from our experience and apply it to everyone. So fanaticism arises from this fundamental idea that if this is giving me some spiritual strength, this is helping me feel close to Krishna, that's good. But this is the only thing that will make others feel close to Krishna. And this can go from very small things to very big things. So I was, when I read books now, of course, use mostly digital books because I'm traveling so much. But when we used to have physical books, I always had a habit of underlining and writing on the side to access. So I was once reading in the library, and there's one senior devotee who had been visiting Pune, and he said, Prabhupada said, the books are like deities. You should not be marking on them. So, you see, what would happen for me sometimes is that I'm a very rational person. And that can get me into trouble because that, you see, it's like, especially if this happens in religious organizations, somebody argues based on a rational point, and then if you give a rational counter argument, say, who do you think you are to argue with me? You know, it's like, okay, you choose how you are arguing. Is it based on rationality or based on authority? Isn't it? So that you change the grounds. So I told him, Prabhu, yes, the books are like deities, and my underlining is like decorating them. How dare you talk back with me? So I said, Prabhu, you made a rational point. I gave a rational response. So he just couldn't accept that. He said, you know. So the thing that happens is sometimes people will say, hey, you should not underline in the books. Okay, if that's your sentiment, that's perfectly fine. But does that have to be the sentiment for everyone? No, of course, what we should not do is, when we are underlining, we should not scratch out any words. But underlining is fine. So there are many small things which can be made into very big things. And this can happen with respect to rituals, it can happen with respect to the way the deity is worshipped. One day one devotee came to me and said that, today my japa was terrible. He's in temple. I said, what happened? He said, before japa there was Tulsi Aarti, and this devotee did Tulsi Aarti. And when he was doing the diya, instead of moving it 7 times, he moved it 9 times. What were you doing? Counting how many times you moved the diya? So now sometimes, now for him, if he does deity worship, yeah, exactly move it 7 times. That will make him feel serious. I am doing bhakti seriously. And that's wonderful if you feel like that. But the thing is that, yes, we should, we have particular ways in which deity worship is to be done. But it's not worth getting agitated about. Whoever is in charge, that person can inform. And it's not like a criminal offense if you move the diya one more time. So it's when we fail to understand the difference between details and principles, then we start becoming fanatical. And when we become fanatical, then it can lead to unnecessary problems. Now Ganesh Chaturthi was there recently, Ganesh Puja is there. So now, so there was one devotee who was a brahmachari for several years. Then he was from a family where for many generations Ganesh Puja has been going on. So his parents, he was called to his home. He's just been introduced to bhakti, not yet become a brahmachari. So he was called back by his parents. He came back and he heard that he had heard some class. When we are devoting, we should take only Krishna Prasad. We should not take anything offered to Devatas. Okay, so what he did, his parents offered him modak. He took the modak, he put it in his mouth and said, I need to go. And he went out. He thought he was going to the restroom. He went to the nearby window and he spit out the modak. And he spit out the modak. Some other relatives were just coming out and they happened to be coming from the window. And they saw he was spitting out the modak. Then Ganesh Puja became Kurukshetra. And he had so much trouble. His parents said that this particular group of people are indoctrinating you, they are taking you to devaluing your culture, don't go there at all. So now, if 365 days we are taking food offered properly to Krishna, one day, if you take one morsel of food that is offered to Ganesh, it's not that Dharmanash is going to happen. The Krishna is an understanding God. So we have to consider what is the big thing and what is the small thing. So Prabhupada says intelligence means to keep things in their proper perspective. So maintaining a relationship with the family is much more important. At that time, okay, a little adjustment of the standards is not an earth-shaking thing. So when we make the details into principles, then it can become a serious problem. So the last point is, talking about? No, not there yet. That's it. I'm concerned how enthusiastic you are. I should get the last point. Okay. So I was talking about P. I talked about first one insecurity, second is misunderstanding, and one P is prestige. Quite often in religious organizations, because we can't see each other's hearts, so what we can see is the externals. And when we see the externals, often doing the externals very properly can bring a lot of prestige for people. And then some people do the external right just to show to others. So Krishna talks about this in the 16th chapter, in the 16-17 verses. He talks about Yajante nama yajnaste dambhe na vidhi purvakam. Some people do nama yajna, some people do yajna for nam. For nam. They do this yajna, the sacrifice, for fame, for prestige. Oh, just see how nicely I'm doing this. And then when they're doing it very nicely, because their purpose is prestige, if anybody does not give them that prestige, oh, you did this so well, then they become very agitated. So prestige and power, this is where people can also become distracted. So also with prestige comes power. So especially when religion becomes mixed with politics. Politics is about power, largely speaking. When religion becomes mixed with politics, now you cannot always completely separate the two. Because religion is, for a serious practitioner, it permeates all aspects of their life. But it's important that the faith, Shraddha, is a personal thing. The state can never mandate it. The state cannot force a person to practice a particular religion. But when religion becomes a search for prestige and power, then people can become very easily fanatic. So that's what, it's not just individuals who become fanatical, there's a time when entire groups become fanatic. So that's most deadly. And at this particular point, again, this is where a lot of self-righteousness comes in. Because I believe that this is what God has told me to do. That I am doing God's will. To the extent one is convinced about that, none of us can know exactly what God's will is. That the more we start thinking, what I am doing is God's will, the more we become arrogant. The more we become proud. So there was an American president, when America was attacked after that, there was a war on terror. And he said at that time, if you are not for the war on terror, then you are for terror. Now, maybe that's artificial polarization. That the framing of it is in such a way that maybe you are against terror, but you don't think the war is the best way to fight with terror. But that is, God has told me to attack this country. That's what he had said. So this is presuming or claiming that God has told me to do something. That is very dangerous. That God has told me, it's one thing, I'm doing this for God. That's one thing, which we all should have that seva bhav. But to say that this is this exact thing that I'm doing right now, that is God's will. I am chastising you because God has told me that you deserve chastisement. Well, maybe it's God, maybe it's Maya. Isn't it? Maybe I am getting angry because that anger gives me a power trip. It gives me my ego rush. I get a kick for my ego, whatever. So this is where things can be the most dangerous. Let's move to the last paragraph. You do this. Yeah, last paragraph. Who would like to read?
Help me, O Lord, to approach rituals intelligently as valuable and even vital means for spiritual growth. Let me always remember that the fruit of such spiritual growth is a heart that is humble and compassionate, not an ego that is self-righteous and judgmental. Bless me, my Lord, to become such a spiritual fruit, one who relishes and radiates the divine joy that comes from an authentic connection with you, the source of the ultimate joy.
Yes. So, our spirituality is seen through our contact with others. So, for us, we all need particular ways in which we connect with the Lord. So, now we are moving to the last part, see, transformation. So, we all may have certain tendencies within us, and we may see others who have some tendencies like this. So, how do we help them? So first is, I already talked a little bit about insecurity. So, because I am doing something, if others are doing something, that is different. See, spiritual growth can go in two ways. How do we deal with insecurity? Spiritual growth can be a growth of faith. And faith means certainty. I have faith in my Guru, I have faith in scripture. And my Guru has told me this is certain, I'm sure about it. So, again, I was in one of the Bible Belt states. So there I saw a verse flow, God said it, I accept it, that settles it. That's it. Well, what exactly did God say? What do you mean when you accept it? There's so many nuances in it. So spiritual growth, another trajectory is humility. As I grow, faith means yes, God exists, God cares, that's one direction. Humility is God is far greater than who I am. God is far greater than my conception of God. And humility leads to curiosity, not certainty. In fact, humility leads to a comfort with uncertainty. That I can never know God completely. I can never know this truth for sure. What's the next step? So curiosity. Okay, I'm approaching God in this way. Somebody else is doing something different. Why are they doing it different? So curiosity, athato brahma jigyasa. That can always keep us open-minded. And humility and curiosity are then related. Humility is, I don't know everything. Curiosity is, I want to know. I want to experience Krishna. I want to experience how you are experiencing Krishna. I can't experience, I at least want to understand how you are experiencing Krishna. So, this particular trajectory, if we follow, I talked about this yesterday in the class, how even the enlightened souls, they are enlightening each other. Krishna says, Buddha are doing both ayantaha. They are also enlightening each other. So, if we see spiritual growth in terms of humility and curiosity, then when we see somebody else doing something, that does not mean we have to stop them from doing it or we have to start doing it ourselves. It is more that, okay, what are you doing? Bhaktivinoda Thakur said that if we go to a place of worship of some other religion, what should be our mood over there? He said we should be there in the mood of reverence and understanding that the God whom we worship has manifested in a different way over here. And we can appreciate the mercifulness of God that He has manifested in this particular way to reach these people. And seeing the compassion, the mercifulness of God, we can become inspired to commit to worshipping God in the way we know Him. In the way we know Him. That means going back to that mountain metaphor, that if somebody is climbing up the mountain this way, and I am climbing up the mountain this way, and suppose we happen to meet someone, then if there is some interaction between us, and that interaction does not have to lead to insecurity. You go, okay, curiosity, okay, what are you doing? How are you doing now? We can learn about that. So that curiosity can be the counter for insecurity. Krishna, now that doesn't mean I have to leave this path and I have to go up and climb over here. No, but I can just learn. I can just learn about it. So that is the way to deal with insecurity. Try to cultivate curiosity. The second was, what was it? Misunderstanding. Now misunderstanding, when that is there, how do we deal with it? By developing our intelligence. So Srila Prabhupada defined intelligence in a very simple way. Prabhupada says intelligence means to see things in their proper perspective. Proper perspective means that we understand what is more important and what is less important. What are the big things and what are the small things. So how do we learn this? This is where Mahajano Yenagataha Sapantha. We associate with devotees. Not just one devotee, different devotees. And we see how they function in bhakti, what they prioritize, how they function, what makes them tick. That way we learn. I think it is Vishaka Mata used this pastor, and she came to Prabhupada. She came to Prabhupada to Mumbai, and they were at one life member's home. They had been invited for prasad. And when they had been invited, one devotee noticed that I remember they had a grand welcome for Prabhupada, they did Pada Puja, and they were so profusely respectful. And then they sat down for prasad. And one devotee said, Prabhupada, there's onion in this food. And Prabhupada said, there's no onion. No, Prabhupada, there is onion. Prabhupada said, there's no onion in this food. So this devotee actually took out a little bit of onion. They showed it to Prabhupada. Now Prabhupada didn't even look at it. Prabhupada said, there is no onion in this food. And Prabhupada was looking so grave and so almost stern, the devotee got silent. And then after that Prabhupada told that it was our mistake that we did not tell them that we don't take onion. So he said that for an Indian family, the sadhu comes to your home and sits down to take food and then goes away without taking the food. That's considered a big anartha has happened, something terrible has happened. So he said we should be extremely careful that we don't do this again. That we communicate our standards clearly. Our failure to communicate should not lead to they feeling hurt. Now, does that mean we should just start taking food, onion, garlic all the time, not to hurt others? That's not the point over here. The point is that each context, we need to be able to understand what is the big thing here, what is the small thing here. So this devotee said, when I heard that from Prabhupada, I understood that Krishna consciousness is actually an adventure. It is not just like a rigid adherence to a rule book. Do this, don't do this, do this, don't do this. It is more of considering Deshakala Patra and understanding what is more important and what is less important. So to the extent we understand that, to that extent we will be able to function effectively. So for us, at different contexts, different things may be less important or more important. Why is that? Because I talk about circumstantial and essential. So there's one of my friends who recently started coming from Cherry started coming to the West. And he was like 3 days in America and he just called me, he said, I'm very agitated. I said, what happened? He said, here in the classes there is no gender separation. Men, women sit together. He said, this absolutely does not happen in India. Why? These people are not all serious. So then I talked with him, I said that, I told him one story about how there's a Western outreach program over there. And this man who we had met, his girlfriend had brought him to the temple. And as soon as he came to the temple, they had to sit separately. And he said, I had no idea what was happening. Sometimes there are many things which we just assume it is straightforward, but for a Western mind, it might just be very weird. I was in Muruvilamba, was about to get Sunday feast class over there, and I had come to the temple hall, the Aarti was getting over. So an Australian middle-aged lady, she approached me and said, can I ask you a question? I said, sure. It's when you blow that, when that conch is blown, why does everyone kiss the floor? From her perspective, what it is you're kissing the floor. They have no idea what is Dandavat or Panchang or whatever. So many of our rituals seem very strange today. So then that devotee, he went to a Western outreach center, where boys, girls, men, women, they sit together. But say, if we come from a culture where gender separation is very strict, then suddenly gender mixing will be distracting. But we come from a culture where gender separation is not so much there, and suddenly gender separation is imposed. That can be distracting. So what is a distraction for whom? That has to be seen according to the Ishtaralabhatra. Unless we understand that, what will happen is we will just impose our judgments on this. This is important. Of course, some level of boundary gender interaction always has to be there, but the specifics may vary. So when I started going to America, it's probably 2016 or something. So I had done a program on university in America, and after that, one American girl asked a question: why do religions fight among each other? So I gave a detailed answer. I talked about the 3 modes and other things, and she was quite satisfied with the answer. So after the class, I was talking with various people, and she also came and she said, "This question had been burdening me for a very long time. You have relieved me. Thank you so much. Can I give you a hug?" So I looked at the devotee picture with you, and I said, "You help me." So now I have devotees that want me. In the Western world, hugging is like a normal expression of affection. Now, so I told this devotee, "Please help me." The devotee helped me, but in an entirely unexpected way. He said that he's a monk. On his behalf, you can hug me. So I was thinking that was not and his wife was next to him. And his wife said, "I am his wife, on his behalf you can hug me." The 2 of them hugged each other. So now, yes, from an Indian perspective, that's quite outrage. They will say, "You don't have any culture, you don't know how to behave with a monk." But they really don't know. What might be very obvious, it's like a big thing, but for somebody in the West, it might not be a big thing. So we have to be sensitive that now I cannot accept that, but at the same time I cannot reject it also. So I have to do it in a sensitive way. So what is a big thing for us? We may have to protect that big thing, but not in a way that we devalue or dismiss others. That's why intelligence means to understand what is a big thing and what is a small thing, and act accordingly. That can prevent a lot of fanaticism. The last part is, so the misunderstanding, we develop our intelligence. And the last part was prestige. Prestige or power. So this is probably the most difficult. If somebody is coming to religion itself for gaining prestige and power, then it's very difficult to change. But sometimes, like I said, it is that you want to prove how good I am, how great I am. And somebody may say, okay, if I am good and great, then my religion is also good, big and great. Is good and great. So, but the purpose of spiritual growth it is not proving. It is one part of it, but the far bigger purpose is improving. It is not so much that proving my path is better than your path. It is actually improving. It is actually becoming a better devotee, becoming a better human being. So, one of the things which is apathies, is nuns, is SBNR, they say that, both of them, that don't tell me what you believe, show me how you behave. So, our behavior itself should be such that people feel, hey, I want to know this person. I want to know what makes this person tick. So, proving is in particular context, it is a purpose, no doubt. Sometimes you may have to have debate, sometimes you may have philosophical arguments, but that's not the primary thing. It is improving. So if you understand what is our purpose, that it is to enrich our own enrich our own Krishna consciousness. And if we are truly Krishna conscious, that itself, Krishna's attractiveness will manifest through us and will attract others. We won't have to impose on others. And that's how we can be a spiritual fruit. The spiritual fruit is the aroma of the fruit spreads and attracts. You see, Prabhupada was extremely pure. But Prabhupada, although sometimes we may think of Prabhupada as being very strong and uncompromising, talking fools and rascals and those kind of words. Yes, Prabhupada did that. But Prabhupada is also, at an individual level, remarkably non-judgmental. That's how people who were breaking all the regulative principles, if I could say for the people in the counterculture, the hippies, it was a regulative principle to break all the regulative principles. That's the way they were living. But Prabhupada did not dismiss them. Prabhupada did not disrespect them. Prabhupada actually attracted them. So, when we focus on that, if my purpose is not just to prove that I am better than you or my path is better than yours. My path is that this is how this has worked for me, and this is how it can work for you also. So when we have that understanding, then we won't be so much seeking prestige. Our purpose is that we want to offer service to others. And yes, if our service is effective, people may also give us respect after that. But that's not primarily our purpose. So in that way, we can be fixed in what we are doing, but at the same time, not become overbearing or imposing or domineering on others. So I'll summarize what we discussed today. Broadly, our topic was how to be a spiritual fruit and not a religious nut. So that means how we can avoid this fanaticism or extremism that comes. What was the acronym we discussed? A, C, and T. A was assessment. We assessed what is the seriousness of the problem. So we talked about what fanaticism does is that when there are people who are fanatics, the fanatics, they affect everyone. The insiders, the fence sitters, and the outsiders. So what happens to the outsiders? They become antagonistic, they become aggressively against us. The fence sitters become alienated. That alienation can range from apathy to aversion. I don't care for you to I downright dislike you. So the outsiders can have an antagonism where they become aggressively against us. And insiders, loneliness. There is, because they start feeling, there's always the fear of being judged and found short. So now we discussed here about how there can be two extremes when it comes to rituals or any externals that are there. They can be overvalued, which can make us fanatical, and we can be devalued, which can make people empty. They are not doing anything of value in their spirituality. You need to be valued aptly, appropriately. So how do we value appropriately? You understand that we discussed the cause. So the cause of fanaticism was what? Three things. We discussed the acronym IMP. I was insecurity. Insecurity is where if I am right, then nothing else can be right. So you must be wrong. We discussed the idea that people think that this is the only way up the mountain. But it doesn't have to be the only way up the mountain. There can be, okay, this is one way, but there can be other ways up the mountain also, which we may not, which may be different from ours. So the way, the transformation, the way we deal with insecurity is through, we discuss how spiritual growth can go along two trajectories. One is, we think it's only in terms of faith. I have strong faith, that means certainty. Well, that is one trajectory. The other can be faith. Spiritual growth means humility, that God is greater than my conceptions of God. And that will lead to curiosity. So, God is greater than my conception of God. So, that is essence of humility over here. So, we can avoid an insecurity. Then the second was misunderstanding. Misunderstanding means that we basically start, in every tradition there is the essential and then there is the circumstantial. The essential is like the principles, and then there are the details. So the essential and the circumstantial. So what happens when there is misunderstanding? We start equating what are the details. We start thinking that they are the principles, and then that's what leads to a problem. So the problem here, the mentality here is that what works for me is the only thing that will work for anyone. And the cure for misunderstanding is intelligence. Yes. Intelligence is to know what are the big things and to know what are the small things. So this requires often considering Desha Kala Patra. That according to time, place, circumstance, what might be very big for me at a particular time may not be that big at another time to another person. And P is prestige or power. That somebody starts practicing religion just to make a show of how great they are. So when this happens, then it can be a problem. And then the cure for this is to focus on the purpose. Why are you practicing? It is not for proving. That can be one part of it, but a much bigger purpose is improving. Whatever I am doing, it is for the purpose of improving myself, and if I am improved, then I naturally attract others. So in this way, we can be firm about how we are climbing up the mountain, but at the same time, if somebody else is climbing up the mountain in a different way, we accept that. We don't become insecure or aggressive about it. So let's conclude with the starting prayer that was there, which we had offered. Bless me, O Lord, to become a spiritual fruit, not a religious nut. Are there any questions or comments? Yes, please.
Thank you, Prabhu. It was a very wonderful class as always. So this is really good for us to apply it to ourselves because that fanatical tendencies do come in. But what about dealing with other people? That is number one. Or let's say we might, by through this intellectual understanding, we might understand that that the fanaticism that they have, they are also sort of being victims to all these tendencies. But what about, let's say, if they are hurting people around them who are getting affected because of their fanaticism, then how do we help them out?
It depends. So, if somebody else is being fanatical, what can we do about them? We shouldn't become fanatical about freeing them from fanaticism. Okay, that can also become, it's like there are liberals and there are conservatives. And sometimes the liberals can be very illiberal to those who are not liberal. Isn't it? So it's the same extremism coming in the opposite direction. So I think we have to be careful about that also. Ultimately, we cannot change anyone. We can only provide them resources and reasons for changing. It's up to them whether they will change or not. One of the things that I have found very helpful, I grew up in India in one of the most conservative brahmachari ashrams. And then when I started traveling abroad, I was 10 years in that ashram. Then I started traveling in India. Then after 5, 6, 7 years, I started traveling abroad. So it is when I started traveling abroad, I started seeing so many different versions of Krishna consciousness. So initially I thought this was not Krishna consciousness at all. But then I realized that, okay, there's so many these people are also Krishna devotees. So I think just talking with people. When we see somebody who is doing something which we feel is wrong, then just talk with them, try to understand what they are doing. Talking with people helps a lot. Now we often, when we talk about bhakti, we talk about deepening our Krishna consciousness. Well, that is important at an individual level. If we want to be in a community, it's just as important, if not more important, to broaden our Krishna consciousness. Deepening is, I go deeper into my relationship with Krishna. Broadening is understanding how different people are attracted to Krishna in different ways. So that broadening happens by discussions. If I consider that this is Krishna is another example of the ocean. So I am approaching Krishna in this way, but somebody else will be approaching Krishna from here. And the way they are approaching Krishna, that's different from mine. And they may not be doing 70% of the things which I do, which I consider central for Krishna consciousness. But still they are approaching Krishna. So when there is discussion, this is what actually broadens. So we should talk with each other. Quite often there are extremists, they don't talk with each other, they talk about each other. Oh, this person did this and that person did that and that person. See how terrible they are? Everybody is terrible. Only I am pure, only I am focused on bhakti. So generally just talking with people and not just be talking with them but encouraging them to talk with others. That ethos itself leads to a lot of broad-mindedness. See, in the Indian tradition, there is a difference between the philosophical and the cultural. So, when Prabhupada was staying in New York, he was staying at one Mishra Yoga studio. Now that person was a Advaitin, and he hosted Prabhupada for some time, and Prabhupada moved on to Lower East Side. And then, when many years later ISKCON was established, he came to meet Prabhupada, and Prabhupada had lunch with him, and they were chatting for a long time. And after that, Giriraj Maharaj asked him, Prabhupada, I thought he's a Mayavadi. And Prabhupada said, yes. He says, philosophically, we argue like anything. But culturally, we are friends. So it's a very important difference. The philosophical differences should not lead to the culture getting lost. Prabhupada gave the example also. If we see a Mayavadi sannyasi also, we should offer obeisances. We may not respect the philosophy, but we respect the renunciation. So like that, the cultural aspect has to be maintained. So that way, basically just talk with each other, and that can help decrease the fanaticism. But if they are hurting others, then if we have that authority, that power, we can try to limit their influence or impact on others. But if we don't, we can't do anything really. Then we may have to escalate to some higher authorities and let's see if something happens. Ultimately, one advantage of, it's a relationship of every soul with Krishna. Not just that particular person who is being fanatical, but even those who are affected by the fanaticism. One advantage in today's world is that because of the internet and social media, spiritual outreach has become very democratized now. It cannot be so legislated. It's not that you have to go to this temple only and hear from this person only. Now the whole world is aware. That can lead to confusion. But that can also lead to a person, okay, I just can't gel with this person. Then they can go somewhere else. So one principle in bhakti is that we all need sajatiya sangha. Sajatiya is like-minded association. So unless we have like-minded association, we cannot move ahead in life. So from the start of my bhakti, I was very analytical. And I used to ask a lot of questions. And there's one devotee I asked, I was asking a lot of questions, and then he just told me sweetly, but words came like a slap on my face. He said, Chaitanya Charan, he said that, and that was not, he called me back, initiated him, I was not initiated at that time. He said that, now you should remember, we are on the bhakti mark, not the jnana mark. Don't ask so many questions. So, I was taken aback. I said, questions are what? Enliven me in Krishna consciousness. Now I am giving classes, but I have so many questions. And I have devotees in different areas of specialization, whom I ask different questions and we discuss. That's what is the juice of my spiritual life. So asking questions and discussing. So then I talked with another senior devotee and he said that, before you ask questions, you should ask the question whether I should ask this question to this person. So, you decide whom to ask questions. If I am an analytical person, then I need to find those devotees who are also analytical. They will enjoy the questions. But those who are not analytical, they are maybe more devotional, they are more lila, they like kirtan. They will either find it irritating, distracting, or exhausting. एक one devotee told me, अपन क्लास सुनता हूँ तो दिमाग से धुआं आता है. Steam comes out of the head. So I think we need like-minded association. Okay, any other questions?
I think this one pretty much happens, Prabhu, because when I went to India, right, like people go with the social media, like Facebook or WhatsApp and all, they take up some fact, and we will go into this kind of mode, and the moment we try to explain them, they will think like you're anti-Hindu. This happened for me, like when we try to give them the logical explanation, like they'll think like, okay, you're trying to preach so much,
Yeah, I think
this is especially in the current generation. People are just taking like one forwards with WhatsApp, social media. It's going very frenetic. Sometimes whatever we were hating in other people, we are some of the people approaching the same thing. You must have noticed.
Yeah, actually what happens is, there is this, what is called? Social media bubble.
Yeah.
There's the algorithm, which if I read something, watch something, the algorithm will show me more and more of that same thing. It leads to what they call a social media, not bubble, social media echo chamber. Echo chamber is, whatever I read, that same thing I'll keep more and more reading of that perspective. And the people just start become totally convinced. This is the only right thing. And there's nothing else. Like when this whole COVID was there, the vaccination, it became a big issue for some devotees. All these vaccines are some diabolical conspiracy and we should not be taking vaccines. Okay, that's an individual decision. Of course, you have to consider the local government policies and everything. Now, of course, that there was some amount of problems with the vaccine imposition and all that, that's all coming out. But the point is, some people can just make one perspective, this is all. How can you not accept it? So it just becomes very difficult. So, there are two extremes. One is some people are narrow-minded. So now, narrow-minded is not the same as some narrow-minded people become also close-minded. So what is the difference between narrow and close? Narrow means they can think only in a particular way. Close means they refuse to think in any other way. This is it. That. Nothing else is there. Now, the opposite of narrow-minded or close-minded, he says open-minded. But it's not that simple. We want to be open-minded, but we can't be so open-minded that our brains fall out. Isn't it? So the opposite of this can be empty-minded. It's like you just don't have any convictions, any opinions, anything that anybody says. So okay, just go that way. Whichever way the wind is going, that way. You have no inner integrity at all. Now, in between, The first is open-minded. Open-minded is, well, okay, this is my understanding, but I'm open to hear what is your understanding. And if we can stay open-minded, then gradually we will become broad-minded. Now the difference between open-minded and broad-minded is, when I'm open-minded, I am ready to hear alternative perspectives. But when I'm broad-minded, I'm capable of holding opposite ideas or different ideas simultaneously. That reality is much more complex than what I understand. So, okay, maybe this works, but this also works. Like open-minded, I'm taking allopathy, but if somebody says Ayurveda will cure you, okay, it will cure. But then I have two friends. One is like a very allopath champion, the other is Ayurveda champion. And both of them criticize each other. And both of them are my friends. So how do I do that? That is, when I talk with them, I talk about their interest. I don't talk about the alternative perspective with them. See? But I don't buy into everything that they say. So broad-minded means we can have different ideas, even opposing ideas, and we can hold them. So becoming broad-minded is not at all easy. It requires a really high level of sattva guna. But at least we can try to become open-minded. Okay? Yes, bro. The question.
Rakesh Prabhuji, very nice class. Thank you so much. Prabhuji, recently we had, the ISKCON had the court case about the retreat philosophy. So, can you share some input on that? Are we fanatics or they say this is the only way, that's the only way. That's the point where.
Okay. That's a good example of how things did go on a nasty track. So I won't have the time to go into the entire issue. I have done a whole video on this topic of ethics. My YouTube channel is there. I talk about the ethics problem from a historical perspective, a psychological perspective, a religious sociological perspective, and an individual perspective.
Yeah, I heard that.
So you saw that. Okay. So anyway, so what I want to talk about two things over here. That there are certain differences which are important at a particular level. And they need to be addressed. So in this case, it was not just like a theological difference, it was also a property dispute. The temple over there, it was registered under ISKCON officially, but the local leader felt that ISKCON not managing properly or whatever. He wanted to have his own place under him alone. So it was a legal dispute. That was one aspect of it. But on top of the legal dispute, there was a philosophical dispute going on about the way initiation should happen. Now this is an important issue and it needs to be addressed. But the problem that happens is that sometimes some disputes are actually best addressed in the intellectual domain among intellectuals. But when it just becomes a public debate, then it becomes quite cheap, it becomes quite dirty, it loses its dignity. And then there is what is called ad hominem attacks. Ad hominem attacks means you don't attack the argument, you attack the person. And then that becomes very bitter. That unfortunately happened. So I would say that in any demographic, if this is 100% people, there will always be differences of opinion. But there are 5% on one extreme, 5% on the other extreme. But quite often this 5%, they make 40% of the noise. And this 5% make 40% of the noise. So what happens is, the remaining 45%, most others, they just want to go on with their life. I don't want to get involved in this. That's why they don't make much noise. But then the whole public discourse becomes dominated by the most extreme voices from both sides. And then it can become bitter, it can become fanatical. So it's best that we focus on our practice of Krishna consciousness and let others, those who are involved, they will resolve the issue. Okay, last question. There's one question more? Okay, yes.
During the course of the class, you mentioned about curiosity and being open to others' philosophies, and often that can also lead to confusion in our own belief system sometimes. So, how important is our own standing in our own faith strong?
Certainty is definitely important. See, for example, if I'm uncertain that Krishna is God, now that is going to be a problem. How can I cultivate Krishna consciousness? Now, from Krishna is God to Krishna only is God, and the way I understand Krishna, that is the only way to understand Krishna. All that can go towards fanaticism. When I say certain curiosity, your curiosity is also grounded in a certain level of certainty. Curious means I am eager to know more, but I also have a confidence that what I know is of value, and my capacity to know is also valuable. So each one of us, we have to see where to direct our curiosity. See, some people may have more musical curiosity. Okay, that's a way different. The kirtans are done, which instruments can be used, what tunes can be learned. Some of us may have more of ritual curiosity. How are the deities worshipped? How can I learn this worship? Some of us may have culinary curiosity. I want to learn what are the recipes, how can they be cooked. Some of us may have philosophical curiosity. In philosophy also there are so many different aspects. So we have to dovetail our curiosity. We are talking about curiosity that is a disposition. It does not have to necessarily be an activity. So in the sense that it's not that we always have to be seeking to learn more, because there are so many areas we can learn more. We can learn more, we can concentrate our energies in learning more in the areas that we are enthusiastic about, that we have some service, or we have interest in a service opportunity. But other areas we don't have to. But understand that there are complexities over here. Things are not black and white. So when I say curiosity, if curiosity is leading to confusion, then we have to do two things. Talk with some devotees who know the subject and get a broader understanding of the subject so that the confusion is resolved. And second is understand that not everything can be understood in black and white terms. There are nuances, there are shades of grey, and that is in one sense inherent in the Vedic philosophy. Like our philosophy says achintya pidave. Achintya means it's inconceivable. That is basically a certain level of uncertainty in it. So it's not like black and white completely. So understanding that also is very helpful. So sometimes education, I'll conclude this point. See, education has both aspects to it. One is that what is complicated, education makes it simple. It is to reveal a simplicity in what seems complicated. But education is another aspect that what is simple, we reveal the complexity. What I think is simple is not that simple. So both are aspects of education. So for example, initially when the parents are teaching children color, they'll say this is black and white. The whole world is so complicated, but look, this is black, this is white. We start with that black and white. If we don't start with the simple, we don't reduce the complicated to simple, we start telling the child, right, okay, this is magenta, there are 6 shades of red. Okay, what is red? The child will see red before that only. The child's face will become red, I'll start crying, you'll forget it. So, but then what happens? At that time we need to start with, make the complicated simple. But then, black and white is there, but the child needs to be educated further. Everything is not black and white, there's so many other colors in between. So that education is also required. So, problem people become fanatical because they just stop at black and white. Now, even when we say this, if we complicate, there's black, there is white. Now, in between, there are many shades of grey. All other colors are basically shades of grey. Now, even when we say there are shades of grey, that does not mean that there is no black and white. Still, there are black and white also. So, it's not that everything is relative. We also have to have certainty about certain things. So, in that sense, it's a nuanced process, but gradually associating with devotees will clarify our confusion and directing our curiosity in the area where we have some interest or whether we have some service. That will be helpful. Okay. Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.
Chaitanya Charan Prabhu ki jai.
So I have written a couple of books newly. This is the book we already read from today. It is 122 prayers based on the first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. Each prayer is accompanied by, as you saw, a little picture and a poetic summary as affirmation.